My daughter had been pushing, more and more insistently, for me to transfer the apartment into her name. It made me uncomfortable, unsettled, but I couldn't understand why. Until one day, walking into a downtown coffee shop, I saw her. She was sitting with my son-in-law, Mark, and a strange man dressed entirely in black. Something deep inside me screamed not to go over there. I sat at a nearby table, hidden behind a column, and I listened to what they were saying. And what I heard sent me into complete shock. Because my own daughter, the child I carried in my womb, was planning to destroy me. So, my dear, if you are watching this, get ready, because what I am about to tell you will change the way you see people forever. But before I continue, please subscribe and tell me where you're watching this story from. I need to know that I'm not alone in this, that someone else understands the pain of being betrayed by your own blood. Let me explain how I ended up in that coffee shop, spying on my daughter as if she were a criminal. My name is Eleanor. I am 63 years old, and until 6 months ago, I believed my life was in order. I have been a widow for 8 years. My husband, Arthur, died of a sudden heart attack, leaving me alone in the apartment we built together over 30 years of marriage. That apartment is everything I have. Every brick, every window, every corner holds our history. We worked day and night to buy it, to pay it off, to make it our home. When Arthur died, I swore I would never sell it, that I would die within those walls that held our memories. Claire is my only child. I raised her alone after her father passed away. I gave her everything: education, support, unconditional love. She married Mark 12 years ago, and at first, he seemed like a good man, hardworking, respectful, attentive. But over the years, something changed. I started to notice strange glances, comments about money, uncomfortable questions about my health. Claire changed, too. She visited less, called only when she needed something, and when she did come over, she no longer looked me in the eye like she used to. Her hugs felt empty, mechanical, as if she were just fulfilling an obligation and nothing more. It all started exactly 6 months ago. It was a Saturday afternoon when Claire showed up at my apartment unannounced. She was carrying a manila folder under her arm and had a serious expression on her face. "Mom, we need to talk about your future," she said as she sat on the sofa. I made coffee, thinking maybe she wanted to talk about her plans to have children or some marital problem. But no, what came out of her mouth left me confused. "Mom, you're getting older. Living alone is dangerous. You could fall, get sick, and no one would be here to help you. Mark and I think you should transfer the apartment into my name. To protect you, to secure your future." I remember I just sat there in silence, looking at her as if she had spoken another language. "Transfer my apartment? The home I built with your father?" "Claire, I don't understand why I would need to do that," I told her calmly. "I'm perfectly fine. I don't need anyone to protect me from anything," she insisted. She said it was for the best, that this way she could take better care of me, that it was just a piece of paper, that nothing would really change. But I refused. Something in her tone of voice, in the way she avoided my gaze, told me there was something more behind that request. She left angry that day, and since then, the visits became more frequent, but also more tense. Every week, sometimes twice a week, Claire would show up with the same topic: the apartment, the transfer, my safety, my age. She always found new arguments, new reasons why I should sign those papers. Mark started coming with her too, supporting every word Claire said. "Eleanor, think about Claire. She just wants what's best for you," he would say with that smile that now seemed fake to me. The pressure mounted. The phone calls multiplied. The text messages wouldn't stop. "Mom, have you thought about what I said? Mom, I need an answer. Mom, this can't wait any longer." I started to feel cornered, confused, even guilty. What if they were right? What if I was really being stubborn and selfish? What if something happened to me and the apartment got lost in legal paperwork? But every time I picked up the phone to tell her yes, something in my chest stopped me, an inner voice that said, "Don't do it, Eleanor. Something isn't right." And that voice was right, because that Tuesday afternoon, as I was walking aimlessly through the city center, trying to clear my head of all that pressure, I saw something that changed everything. I entered the coffee shop almost by accident. I needed to sit down, rest a bit, maybe have something warm to calm my nerves. The place was half empty. Some people were working on their laptops, others were chatting quietly. I ordered a coffee and looked for a quiet table. That's when I saw her, Claire, sitting at the back of the shop, with Mark by her side, and across from them, a man I had never seen before in my life. Tall, thin, dressed completely in black, with a leather briefcase on the table. They were talking in low voices, but there was something in their gestures, in the way they leaned over the documents the man was showing, that put me on high alert immediately. My first instinct was to go over, say hello, ask what they were doing there, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the expression on Claire's face. Hard, cold, calculating. An expression I had never seen on her before. Or maybe it was the way Mark kept looking around, nervously, as if he was afraid of being seen. I don't know. I just know that instead of approaching them, I quietly backed away and sat at a table behind a decorative column, from where I could see them perfectly without being seen. My heart was beating so loud I thought everyone in the coffee shop could hear it. I held my coffee cup in my trembling hands and forced myself to breathe slowly. And then I started to listen. Claire's voice reached me, clear and sharp. "Mr. Hayes, we need this to be quick. We can't wait any longer." The man in black nodded as he opened his briefcase. "I understand perfectly, Claire. But these processes take time. We can't rush and make mistakes." Mark chimed in, tapping the table gently with his knuckles. "It's been 6 months since we started this. My mother keeps refusing to sign. She's starting to get suspicious." Her mother? It took me a second to realize they were talking about me. I was the mother who was refusing to sign. I was the obstacle in their plans. The man named Hayes took some documents out of his briefcase and spread them on the table. "Don't worry. I've handled cases like this many times. The key is in the medical documentation. If we can get 3 certified doctors to diagnose advanced senile dementia or mental incompetence, the judge will have no choice but to grant you legal guardianship. And once you have guardianship, you can do whatever you want with her properties." I felt the air leave my lungs. Dementia, mental incompetence, legal guardianship. The words swirled in my head like a destructive tornado. Claire leaned forward, and for the first time in months, I saw genuine emotion on her face. But it wasn't love or concern. It was greed, desperation. "And how long will that take?" she asked urgently. Mr. Hayes shrugged. 2 months, maybe 3. I have contacts in several private clinics, doctors who understand, let's say, the complexity of these family situations. Of course, their services come at a cost. Mark took an envelope from the inside pocket of his jacket and slid it across the table. "Here's $5,000 as a down payment. The rest when we have the documents signed by the judge." $5,000. My daughter had just paid $5,000 to have her own mother declared insane, to steal my home, to destroy my life. Tears began to roll down my cheeks. Silent, hot, bitter. I wanted to stand up, to scream at them, to ask them how they could do this to me. But I couldn't move. I was paralyzed by shock, by pain, by the deepest betrayal I had ever experienced in my entire life. Mr. Hayes put the envelope in his briefcase without counting it, as if $5,000 were pocket change to him. "Perfect. Now, let me explain exactly how the process will work," he said as he pulled out more papers. "First, we need to document erratic behaviors. Have you noticed any forgetfulness, confusion with dates, trouble remembering names?" Claire shook her head, frustrated. "That's the problem, Mr. Hayes. My mother is completely lucid. She remembers everything. She manages her bank accounts perfectly. She even does the crossword puzzle in the newspaper every morning. I can't just invent symptoms she clearly doesn't have." The lawyer smiled in a way that turned my stomach. "You don't need to invent anything, my dear. You just need to interpret. Your mother is 63 years old. At that age, anything can be a sign of cognitive decline. Does she repeat stories? All old people do, but we'll call it recent memory loss. Does she take a long time to answer questions? She's not thinking. She's confused. Does she prefer to stay at home? Social isolation, a classic symptom of early dementia. You see? It's all a matter of perspective and proper documentation. Mark laughed, a dry laugh that made me realize I had never really known this man. That's brilliant. Simple but brilliant. Claire nodded, but I saw something in her eyes. Guilt? Doubt? I couldn't be sure from my hiding spot. What if she refuses to see these doctors? My daughter asked. My mother is stubborn. If I tell her she needs a medical evaluation, she'll get suspicious immediately. Mr. Hayes already had an answer for that, too. That's why we'll go slowly. First, take her for a general checkup. Tell her it's routine, something normal for her age. One of my contacts will be working at that clinic. He'll do the first evaluation and plant the first seeds in her medical file. After that, we'll stagger the visits. I bit my lips so hard I tasted the metallic tang of blood in my mouth. They had it all planned, every detail, every step, and I had been on the verge of giving in, on the verge of signing those papers just so they would stop pressuring me. If I had, I would be signing my own sentence right now. Claire picked up her cup of tea, surely cold by now, and took a sip before speaking again. Mr. Hayes, I need to be honest with you. This isn't just about the apartment. Well, it is, but there's more. The lawyer leaned back in his chair, waiting. We're in serious financial trouble. I have gambling debts of almost $200,000. Mark is about to lose his business. We're being chased by loan sharks who don't take excuses. $200,000. My daughter had a gambling addiction. How did I not know? How did I not see it? Mark added. Eleanor's apartment is worth at least $450,000, according to the latest market appraisal. If we can transfer it to our name and sell it quickly, we can pay off all the debts and still have enough left over to start fresh somewhere else. Maybe move to another state. Start over. Mr. Hayes drummed his fingers on the table. And what will you do with Eleanor once you have the money? Because once she's declared incompetent, you'll be her legal guardians. You'll be responsible for her. The silence that followed was long and heavy. Claire looked at Mark. Mark looked at Claire. It was my son-in-law who finally spoke, and his words ripped the soul from my chest. We've already looked into some institutions. There's a place about 3 hours from here, a home for people with mental health issues. It's not expensive, $700 a month. Once we admit her there, Medicaid will cover most of the expenses. We can visit her once a month, keep up appearances with family and friends. Claire added quickly, it's for the best. She'll be professionally cared for, and we can solve our problems without anyone getting really hurt. Without anyone getting hurt? They wanted to steal my home, declare me crazy, lock me up in a psychiatric facility, and they thought no one would get hurt. Rage began to replace the shock. A cold, calculated rage I had never felt before. Mr. Hayes closed his briefcase with a dry snap. Then we're in agreement. We'll start next Monday. Claire, you'll make a doctor's appointment for your mother. Use any excuse. A routine checkup, blood work, whatever. Dr. Pierce will be working at the clinic that day. He's one of my best contacts. He'll start the medical file, as we discussed. Then, in 2 weeks, you'll take her to the second specialist. And so on, until we have the complete documentation. And the judge? Mark asked. Are you sure he'll approve the guardianship? Mr. Hayes smiled smugly. Judge Albright has handled hundreds of guardianship cases. He's a busy man who trusts medical documentation. If 3 certified doctors say Eleanor Martin can't take care of herself, he'll sign the order without a second thought. I've seen him do it dozens of times. It's a piece of cake. A piece of cake. Destroying my life was a piece of cake for them. Claire stood up, and for a moment I thought she was coming in my direction. I shrank in my seat, trying to make myself invisible behind the column, but she just stretched and picked up her purse. I have to go. I told Mom I'd be back early. If I'm late, she'll start asking questions. How ironic. My daughter worrying about getting home early while planning my destruction. The 3 of them stood up. Mr. Hayes put all the documents back in his briefcase. Mark left a $20 bill on the table to pay for the drinks. We'll stay in touch, the lawyer said as he shook both of their hands. Remember, absolute discretion. No one can know about this until we have everything legalized. Not friends, not family, no one. Claire nodded. Understood. Just the three of us know. They started walking towards the exit. I sank deeper into my chair, hiding my face behind my coffee cup. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure I was going to have a heart attack. They walked past my table without looking at me. Claire was on her phone, probably pretending to be worried about me. Yes, Mom, I'm on my way. No, I wasn't long. I just had to do some quick shopping. Lies. It was all lies. I waited a full 5 minutes after they left before I dared to move. My legs were shaking so much I could barely stand. I left money on the table, more than necessary because I couldn't focus on counting correctly, and walked out of the coffee shop as best I could. The cool afternoon air hit my face, but it didn't help clear the fog of betrayal that clouded my mind. I walked aimlessly for what felt like hours. The streets passed before my eyes without me really seeing them. People walked around me, living their normal lives, with no idea that my world had just collapsed. I finally found a bench in a small plaza and sat down. My hands were still shaking. I took my phone out of my purse and looked at the screen. 3 messages from Claire. Mom, where are you? Mom, you're worrying me. Mom, please answer. The hypocrisy turned my stomach. I turned off the phone without replying. The sun was beginning to set when I finally managed to gather my thoughts. I couldn't go home. Not yet. Claire would be there waiting for me, feigning concern, hugging me with those traitorous arms. I couldn't face her. Not without a plan. Not without knowing what to do. I thought about calling the police, but what would I tell them? That I overheard my daughter planning something that hadn't happened yet? I had no proof. Just my word against theirs. And if Mr. Hayes really had contacts, doctors and judges on his side, who would believe me? A 63-year-old woman accusing her own daughter of conspiracy. I would sound exactly like the mentally incompetent person they wanted everyone to believe I was. I needed help. But from whom? I didn't have many close friends. After Arthur died, I had gradually isolated myself. The friends I used to meet up with had moved away or we had lost touch. My extended family lived in other states, and we barely spoke. Claire was my only real connection to the world, and now I had discovered that connection was pure poison. Then I remembered June, my next-door neighbor. We had been living in the same building for almost 20 years. We occasionally shared coffee, watered each other's plants when one of us traveled, exchanged recipes and complaints about the building manager. June was 10 years older than me, also a widow, but with an energy and lucidity that many young people would envy. I took a cab back home, but I didn't go straight into my apartment. I knocked on June's door. She opened with a smile that immediately faded when she saw my face. Eleanor, my goodness, what happened to you? You look like you've seen a ghost. I almost laughed at the irony. I had seen something worse than a ghost. I had seen my daughter's true face. June, I need to talk to you. It's urgent. May I come in? She let me in without hesitation, closed the door, and led me to her living room. She made me a chamomile tea while I tried to find the words to explain the unexplainable. Finally, between tears and pauses to breathe, I told her everything. The coffee shop, the conversation, the plans, the lawyer, the debts, the nursing home, everything. June listened to me in silence, her face going through all the emotions. Shock, indignation, anger, sadness. When I finished, she took my hands in hers. Eleanor, this is very serious. You can't face this alone. You need a lawyer. A real, honest lawyer who will help you protect yourself. I shook my head, defeated. And how do I know who to trust? Mr. Hayes is a lawyer. He has contacts. How do I know the next lawyer I hire isn't a friend of his? June squeezed my hands tightly, looking me directly in the eyes. I know someone. My nephew, Samuel Pierce, is a lawyer specializing in family law and elder protection. He's a good man, Eleanor. Honest. Full of integrity. He's helped many people in similar situations. Let me call him right now. I hesitated. Could I trust someone else after what I had just discovered? What if this Samuel was also corrupt? What if all lawyers knew each other and shared secrets? But looking into June's sincere eyes, I knew I had no other choice. I needed professional help, and fast. June dialed the number and spoke briefly with her nephew. She explained the situation in general terms, without giving too many details over the phone. After 5 minutes, she hung up and smiled at me. Samuel says he can see you tomorrow morning at his office. 9 o'clock. I'll write down the address for you. That night I slept on June's couch. I couldn't face Claire yet. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Message after message. Call after call. Mom, where are you? Mom, I'm so worried. Mom, if you don't answer, I'm going to call the police. The police. How ironic. The person threatening to call the police was the same one planning to destroy my life. Finally, around 10 o'clock at night, I replied with a short text. I'm fine. I stayed with a friend. See you tomorrow. I gave no further explanation. I didn't owe her any. Claire replied immediately. What friend? Why didn't you let me know? You had me so worried. I turned off the phone without replying. I wasn't going to fall for her game of fake concern. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Claire's face in that coffee shop, cold, calculating, planning my confinement as if she were planning a vacation. How had it come to this? At what point had my sweet little girl turned into this stranger capable of betraying her own mother? At 9 o'clock sharp the next morning, June accompanied me to Samuel's office. The building was in the city center, a modest but professional place. We went up to the 3rd floor and entered a small but tidy office. Samuel greeted us personally. He was a man in his 40s, tall, with glasses and a kind expression that made me feel slightly safer. Mrs. Martin, my aunt briefly told me about your situation. Please, sit down and tell me everything in detail. Everything you tell me will remain under absolute confidentiality. For the next hour, I repeated the whole story, this time more calmly, with more details, trying to remember every word I had heard in that coffee shop. Samuel took notes in a notebook, nodding occasionally, asking specific questions. Do you remember the other lawyer's full name? Mr. Hayes. I only heard Mr. Hayes. Did they mention the name of any specific clinic? No, they just said they had contacts in several private clinics. And the judge? They said Albright. Yes, Judge Albright. Samuel stopped writing and looked at me seriously. Mrs. Martin, this is more serious than I imagined. Judge Albright has been under internal investigation for months for approving questionable guardianships. And I know several lawyers like this, Mr. Hayes, who work in these kinds of schemes. Unfortunately, this is more common than people think. I was frozen. Common? Children stealing from their parents was common? Samuel continued. Every year, thousands of senior citizens fall victim to this type of fraud. Relatives looking to take over properties, savings, pensions. The legal system should protect them, but in many cases, the system itself is used as a weapon. That's why I exist. To fight against this injustice. His words gave me the first glimmer of hope in almost 24 hours. So you can help me? I asked with a trembling voice. He nodded firmly. I can and I will help you. But we need to act fast and smart. If your daughter and son-in-law have already paid $5,000 to that lawyer, it means this is already in motion. We can't underestimate their determination. What should I do? I asked, feeling for the first time since yesterday that I had some control over the situation. Samuel leaned back in his chair, thinking. First, we need evidence. You heard that conversation, but you didn't record it. It's your word against theirs. We need solid documentation that proves their intentions. Second, we need to legally protect your property before they make their move. And third, we need to prepare for when they try to take you to those fake medical evaluations. It all sounded complicated, even dangerous. But I had no other choice. How do we get that evidence? I asked. Samuel took a small device out of his drawer. It looked like an ordinary pen. This is a recorder. Perfectly legal in this state, as long as you are part of the conversation you are recording. The next time Claire or Mark come to pressure you about the apartment, record everything. Every word, every implied threat. It will all be useful. I took the pen with trembling hands. What if they notice? He shook his head. They won't notice. This device has 30 hours of recording capacity. You just press here to start and here to stop. It's completely silent. Even if they hold it in their hand, they won't notice anything strange. Now, about your property, Samuel continued as he opened a folder. I need you to bring me all the documents for your apartment. Deeds, property titles, any related paperwork. I'm going to review it to make sure everything is in order, and I'm going to prepare legal documents that will protect your property from any unauthorized transfer attempts. I'm also going to register an alert in the property system. If anyone tries to make any move on your apartment without your notarized consent, alarms will go off immediately. I felt overwhelmed by all the information, but also grateful. Finally, someone was really helping me. And about the medical evaluations, Samuel said, as he wrote something on a sheet of paper. When Claire tries to take you to those appointments, you're going to go. But before you go, you'll let me know. I will contact legitimate doctors that I know and trust. They will conduct real, independent evaluations of your mental state. Those evaluations will contradict any false diagnosis the corrupt doctors try to produce. I'm also going to request that all your medical evaluations be recorded on video. It's your right as a patient, and no legitimate doctor will refuse. Every word he said gave me back a little of my strength. I wasn't helpless. I had options. I had help. I left Samuel's office with a list of tasks and, for the first time in 2 days, a plan. June hugged me on the street. See? I told you Samuel was good. You're going to be okay, Eleanor. We're not going to let those scoundrels get away with it. I returned to my apartment around noon. Claire was sitting in the hallway, outside my door, waiting for me. When she saw me, she stood up quickly. Her face showed concern, but now I could see the falsehood behind every expression. Mom, thank God. Where were you? Why didn't you answer my calls? You had me so worried. Every word was poison disguised as honey. I was with a friend, I answered coldly as I searched for my keys. I already told you in the text. Claire followed me as I opened the door. What friend? I didn't know you had friends you'd stay overnight with without telling me. I entered my apartment and turned to look at her. She was standing in the doorway, waiting to be invited in. For the first time in my life, I didn't want my daughter in my house. Claire, I'm tired. I need to rest. We'll talk later. I saw the surprise in her eyes. I had never rejected her like this before. Are you okay, Mom? You look different. Different? Of course I was different. Now I knew the truth. I'm perfectly fine, I said as I started to close the door. I just need some time for myself. I'll call you later. I closed the door before she could answer. I heard her stay standing outside for several minutes, probably processing my rejection. Finally, I heard her footsteps walking away down the hall. I leaned against the closed door, breathing deeply. I had taken the first step. I had set a boundary. Now came the hard part, acting normal while gathering evidence against my own daughter. The next few days were psychological torture. Claire called constantly. She came to the apartment unannounced. Every conversation was a double act. She pretending to be the worried daughter, me pretending to be the trusting mother. But underneath every word, we both knew something had changed. She attributed it to my age, my stubbornness. I knew it was because I had finally seen her true face. On one of her visits, Claire brought up the topic of the apartment again. Mom, we really need to talk about this. It's important. For your safety. I had the recorder pen in my pocket. I activated it discreetly. Claire, I've already told you I'm not going to transfer my apartment, I answered calmly. This is my home. Your father and I worked our whole lives for it. She sighed dramatically. Mom, it's not about taking it from you. It's about protecting it. What if you get sick? What if something happens to you, and there's no one to manage your affairs? I looked her straight in the eye. I'm perfectly healthy. I can manage my own affairs. And when the time comes that I can't, I'll figure out what to do then. Mark, who had come with her, intervened. Eleanor, don't be difficult. Claire just wants to help you. We all want to help you. Help me. That word sounded so hollow coming from him. I don't need that kind of help, I said firmly. I saw the frustration growing on Claire's face. Mom, you're being irrational. Why are you so stubborn about this? There it was. The first crack in her mask. Irrational. Stubborn. the same words she would use to justify having me declared incompetent. "I'm not being irrational," I replied calmly. "I own my property, and I have the right to keep it. That's not irrational. That's my legal right." Mark stood up, clearly annoyed. "Look, Eleanor, we're trying to be patient with you, but this is getting ridiculous." "Then stop insisting," I said as I also stood up, pointing to the door. "It's my final decision. I'm not going to change my mind. Now, if you don't mind, I have things to do." Claire looked at me with an expression I'll never forget. A mixture of anger, frustration, and something darker. "Fine, Mom. Whatever you want, but you're going to need help eventually. And when that day comes, remember that we tried to do this the easy way." It was a barely veiled threat. They tried to do it the easy way, convincing me to sign voluntarily. Now came the hard way, having me declared incompetent by force. After they left, I took out the recorder pen and stopped it. My hands were shaking as I put it away in a safe place. It had worked. I had their conversation recorded, their thinly veiled threats, their attempts at manipulation. It was all documented. The next day, I took the recording to Samuel. He listened to the whole thing, taking notes, nodding at key moments. When he finished, he took off his glasses and looked at me seriously. "This is gold, Mrs. Martin. Especially that last part where Mark says they're trying to do it the easy way. That implies there's a hard way planned. Any judge will see this as evidence of coercion. But Samuel also warned me that we needed more. A single recording might not be enough. We needed a pattern of behavior. We needed to prove that this wasn't an isolated incident but a sustained plan. Keep recording every interaction," he instructed me, "and be prepared. If they've already paid that down payment to Mr. Hayes, it means the clock is ticking. They're going to step up their efforts soon." He was right. 3 days later, Claire appeared at my door with a woman she introduced as Dr. Evans. "Mom, I brought you a gift," Claire said with that fake smile I now recognized so well. "Dr. Evans offers in-home medical checkups for seniors. I thought it would be good for her to give you a general checkup, to make sure everything is okay." My heart started beating faster. This was the first move Mr. Hayes had mentioned in the coffee shop, the general checkup that would plant the first seeds in my medical file. "I don't need any checkup," I said as I discreetly activated the recorder in my pocket. "I feel perfectly fine." Dr. Evans smiled professionally. "Mrs. Martin, it's just a routine checkup. Blood pressure, glucose level, some basic questions about your health. It won't take more than 30 minutes, and it's completely free. Your daughter has already paid for the service." Of course she did, with the money she didn't have, paying for services that would destroy my life. "I appreciate the gesture, Claire, but it's really not necessary," I insisted. I saw the frustration growing in my daughter's eyes. "Mom, don't be difficult. It's just a checkup. Why are you so resistant to something so simple?" There it was again. The narrative that I was the difficult one, the irrational one. "I'm not being resistant," I explained calmly. "I just don't see the need. If I need a medical checkup, I can go to my own doctor." Dr. Evans intervened with a soft, condescending voice. "Mrs. Martin, I understand that changes can be difficult at your age. It's normal to feel a little confused or reluctant about new things." At my age, confused. They were already starting with the language, planting the seeds of incompetence even in this simple conversation. "I'm not confused, doctor," I said firmly. "I know exactly what's happening here, and I neither need nor want your medical checkup. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have things to do." Claire turned red. "Mom, this is ridiculous. Dr. Evans came all the way here especially for you. You could at least be polite." I stood my ground. "I am being polite, but I am also being clear. I do not want this service." "Thank you for coming, doctor, but it won't be necessary, doctor." Evans exchanged a look with Claire, a look that said it all. This was not going according to plan. "Well," said the doctor as she picked up her medical bag, "if you change your mind, here's my card. Claire has my number too." After they left, I immediately called Samuel. I told him about the visit and the supposed doctor. He was already one step ahead. I looked up all the doctors named Evans in the city who offer home services. I found 3. I'll send you photos by text. You can identify which one it was." Minutes later, the photos arrived. I recognized her immediately. "It's this one," I replied, pointing to the second photo. Samuel did some digging. It turned out that Dr. Evans had been sanctioned twice by the State Medical Board for questionable documentation in guardianship cases. It wasn't technically illegal for her to practice medicine, but her reputation was tarnished. "This is perfect," Samuel said. "If they use her evaluation in court, we can easily discredit her by showing her history, but we need to be prepared for their next moves." I felt like I was in the middle of an invisible war. Every day was a battle of strategy and counter-strategy. Claire called constantly, trying to schedule medical appointments for me. I refused them all, always with different excuses. That I was busy, that I wasn't feeling well, that I preferred to wait for my regular doctor. One afternoon, while checking my mail, I found something that made my blood run cold. An official letter from a law firm. It wasn't Samuel's. It was a completely different one. I opened it with trembling hands. It was a notification that Claire had initiated legal proceedings to obtain power of attorney over my financial and medical affairs, citing concerns about my well-being and ability to make decisions. They had already started the legal attack. I called Samuel immediately, almost shouting into the phone. "They've started the process. I received a legal notice. They say Claire is seeking power of attorney over me." Samuel calmed me down. "Calm down, Mrs. Martin. This was expected. In fact, it's good that they've done it now, because it gives us a chance to fight in open court. Bring that notice to my office immediately. We are going to respond forcefully." That same afternoon, Samuel prepared our legal response. Not only did we reject Claire's petition, but we filed a counterclaim for attempted fraud and financial exploitation of a senior. We included the recordings, the research on the lawyer Mr. Hayes, Dr. Evans, everything. The game had changed. We were no longer playing defense. We were attacking. 2 days later, Claire showed up at my apartment, furious. More furious than I had ever seen her. "What the hell did you do, Mom? You hired a lawyer? You're suing us? Your own daughter?" I remained calm, although my heart was beating like a war drum. The recorder was active in my pocket. "Claire, I'm just protecting myself. Something I apparently need to do against my own family." She entered the apartment without an invitation, with Mark following her. They both looked desperate. "Mom, this is a terrible misunderstanding," Claire said, changing her tone to a softer one. "We just want to help you. Why would you think we want to hurt you?" "Because I heard you," I finally said. "I couldn't keep pretending anymore. I heard you in the coffee shop with that lawyer, Mr. Hayes, planning how to declare me insane, how to steal my apartment, how to lock me up in a nursing home." The silence that followed was deafening. Claire turned pale. Mark opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Finally, Claire spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "You were there. At the coffee shop. You heard us." I nodded, tears starting to roll down my cheeks. I heard every word, every plan, every betrayal. Mark recovered first. "Look, Eleanor, it's not what you think. We were exploring options, just options. For your future care." I laughed, a bitter, broken laugh. "Options? Paying a corrupt lawyer $5,000 to have me declared insane is exploring options?" Claire started to cry. I didn't know if they were real tears or acted. I couldn't distinguish anything about her anymore. "Mom, we're desperate. We have serious financial problems. We thought that maybe if we had access to the value of the apartment." "So it's true," I interrupted her. $200,000 in gambling debts? Mark's business going under? It's all true." Mark exploded. "Yes, it's true. We're drowning. And you're sitting here on an apartment worth almost $500,000 while your own daughter drowns in debt." His true nature was finally emerging. There were no more pretenses. "That apartment is mine," I said with a trembling but firm voice. "I earned it. I paid for it. It's all I have left of your father, Claire, and you wanted to steal it from me. You wanted to lock me up in a psychiatric hospital so you could sell it in peace." Claire sank onto the sofa, sobbing. "We weren't going to leave you there forever. Just until we solved our problems. Then we would have gotten you out. I swear." Lies, I said coldly. Once you had me declared incompetent, once you had me forcibly medicated as you planned, I would have never gotten out. You would have left me there to rot while you enjoyed my money. Mark approached me menacingly. We can still do it, you know? We still have contacts. We can still prove you're crazy. Who's going to believe a paranoid old woman over her own daughter? I took out my phone. Samuel will believe me. The judge will believe me. Everyone will believe me when they hear the recordings. Oh, and speaking of which, this conversation is also being recorded. Mark's face transformed into pure rage. For a moment, I thought he would hit me. He took a step towards me with his fists clenched, but Claire stopped him. No, Mark, we've done enough damage. She looked at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. Regret? Shame? Or just frustration at being caught? Mom, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. We never wanted it to go this far. It all got out of control. I shook my head. It didn't get out of control, Claire. You planned it meticulously. Fake doctors, fraudulent documents, a corrupt lawyer. That's not something that gets out of control. That's pure premeditation. Mark took Claire by the arm. Let's go. There's nothing left to do here. The old woman beat us this time, as if they were planning to try again. If you come near me again, I said with a firm voice, if you try anything else, I swear I won't just sue you civilly. I will press criminal charges. Elder exploitation, fraud, conspiracy, everything Samuel can find in the penal codes. Understood? Claire nodded weakly. Mark just glared at me. This isn't over, Eleanor. Remember that. They left, slamming the door. I was left alone in my apartment, trembling from head to toe. I stopped the recorder and collapsed onto the sofa. I had won this battle, but was the war over? The following days were strangely silent. Claire didn't call. She didn't visit. She didn't send messages. It was as if she had disappeared from my life completely. Part of me felt relieved. Another part, the part that was still a mother despite everything, felt shattered. I had lost my daughter. Not to death, but to betrayal. And that hurt in ways I never imagined possible. Samuel kept me informed about the legal process. Claire's petition for power of attorney was denied. The judge reviewed our evidence and found that there was no legal basis for her claims. Furthermore, the judge ordered an investigation into the lawyer, Mr. Hayes, and his practices. It was a victory, but it felt hollow. One afternoon, while having coffee with June in her apartment, she asked me a question that left me speechless. Eleanor, what are you going to do now? With the apartment? With your life? With everything? I had no answer. I had spent weeks fighting, defending myself, surviving. But I hadn't thought about what would come next. I don't know, I admitted. I don't trust anyone anymore. Claire was all I had, and she betrayed me in the worst possible way. How do I move on after this? June took my hand. You move on by living, Eleanor. Living on your own terms. Protecting what's yours. And maybe, just maybe, finding new reasons to smile. I decided to make some important changes in my life. The first was to update my will with Samuel. If something happens to me, I told him, I want my apartment to be sold and all the money to go to charities that help elderly victims of family abuse. Not 1 cent for Claire. Samuel prepared the documents. We also set up a trust that protected my assets. No one could touch my property without going through multiple layers of legal verification. I felt safer, but also more alone than ever. I had won my independence and my home, but I had lost my only family in the process. 2 weeks after the last confrontation, I received a letter. It was from Claire, handwritten, not sent by her lawyer. I opened it with trembling hands. Mom, it began, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to understand. But I need you to know that I never really wanted to hurt you. The debts were drowning us. Mark lost everything in bad investments. I lost everything at the gambling tables trying to win back what he had lost. We became desperate. And in that desperation, I forgot who you are. I forgot everything you did for me. I forgot that you're my mother, and that you gave me everything I have. The letter continued. Mark and I are getting a divorce. He wants to fight this legally, to keep trying to get the apartment. But I can't anymore. I can't keep being this person I've become. I'm checking into a rehabilitation program for gambling addiction. I'm going to sell everything I have to pay what I can of my debts. And after that, I don't know what I'll do, but I won't come looking for you again. Not until I can look you in the eye without feeling this shame that is consuming me. I love you, Mom. I always loved you, even when I was planning the unforgivable. I hope that one day, maybe in another life, you can remember me as I was before. Your daughter who hugged you and told you that you were her hero, not as the monster I became. Claire, I cried for the daughter I had lost, for the relationship we could never recover, for the pain of both of us, for everything that could have been and never would be. June found me crying and hugged me without saying a word. Sometimes silence is the best comfort. Are you going to answer her? She finally asked. I shook my head. I don't know what to say. I don't know if there's anything to say. She's right. I can't forgive this. Not now. Maybe never. June nodded with understanding. Then, don't answer. Give yourself time. Give yourself space. And if one day you decide you want to try to rebuild something, it will be your decision. No one can force you. Months passed. Samuel informed me that the investigation into Mr. Hayes had led to his temporary suspension from the bar. Several of his cases were being reviewed. Dr. Evans also faced a new investigation from the medical board. Judge Albright was forced into early retirement while the internal investigation continued. My case had opened a Pandora's box that was exposing a corrupt system that had victimized dozens of vulnerable seniors. I felt proud for having fought, for not giving up, for being stronger than they expected. One day, June invited me to a support group that met at the community center. It's for seniors who have experienced family or financial abuse, she explained. I thought maybe it would help you to talk to other people who understand what you went through. At first, I hesitated. I didn't want to air my pain in front of strangers. But I finally agreed. I needed to heal, and I couldn't do it alone. In that group, I met people with similar stories, children who stole, grandchildren who scammed, families who betrayed. Each story was unique, but the pain was universal. And for the first time since this whole hell began, I didn't feel alone. I learned that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning to live with the pain without it destroying you. It means finding new purposes, new connections, new reasons to keep going. My apartment stopped being just the place where Arthur and I built our memories. It became my fortress, the symbol of my strength, the proof that I could fight and win. One afternoon in May, exactly 6 months after the incident in the coffee shop, I received a call from an unknown number. I hesitated before answering, but something told me I should. Mrs. Martin? A young female voice asked. Yes, who's speaking? There was a pause. My name is Amelia. I'm a counselor at the rehabilitation center where your daughter Claire was a resident for the last 4 months. My heart stopped. Was? She's not there anymore? Amelia sighed softly. Claire completed her program 2 weeks ago. She's living in a halfway house, working in a coffee shop, rebuilding her life bit by bit. She asked me to call you because she doesn't have the courage to do it herself. I felt a mix of emotions so intense I couldn't process them all. Relief that Claire was okay. Anger because what she had done still hurt. Confusion about what this meant for me. Why are you calling me and not her? I asked. Amelia answered with a kind voice. Because Claire is terrified of your rejection. She has worked intensely on her recovery, not just from gambling, but from the trauma and the decisions she made. She fully understands the magnitude of what she tried to do to you, and she understands that you have every right to want nothing to do with her ever again. But she asked me to at least tell you that she's alive, that she's trying to be better, and that she regrets every second of what she did. I closed my eyes, feeling the tears welling up behind my eyelids. I don't know what you want me to do with this information, Amelia, she replied gently. Nothing, Mrs. Martin. You don't have to do anything. Claire just wanted you to know. She doesn't expect forgiveness. She doesn't expect a relationship. She just wanted you to know that she's trying to be the person you raised, not the monster she became. After hanging up, I sat on my balcony for hours, watching the city spread out before me. What was I supposed to feel? What was I supposed to do? I had no answers, just more questions piling on top of old wounds that were just beginning to close. That night, I talked to June about the call. "Do you think I should contact Claire?" I asked, though I already knew the decision was mine alone. June looked at me with those wise eyes that had seen too much in her 73 years. "I think you should do what your heart tells you, not what your pain screams at you. They are different things." I spent days thinking about her words. My pain screamed at me to keep my distance, to protect my newfound peace. But my heart, that treacherous muscle that keeps loving even when it shouldn't, whispered for me to at least listen, to at least give a chance to the possibility of something, even if I didn't know what. 2 weeks after Amelia's call, I made a decision. I asked Samuel to contact the rehabilitation center and leave a message for Claire. Simple, direct. "Your mother will agree to see you once. On neutral ground. A public coffee shop. 1 hour. No promises." Samuel looked at me with concern. "Are you sure about this, Mrs. Martin? After everything that happened, do you really want to expose yourself again?" I nodded, though my stomach was churning with nerves. "I need to close this chapter properly. I need to look her in the eye and decide if there's anything left to save or if I need to say goodbye for good." The meeting was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon at a downtown coffee shop, different from the one where I had witnessed her betrayal. I arrived 15 minutes early, accompanied by June, who sat at a distant table, just to give me a sense of security. At 3 o'clock, Claire walked in. I almost didn't recognize her. She had lost weight. Her hair, once always perfectly styled, was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore no makeup. She was dressed in simple clothes, an olive green shirt, and dark pants. But what struck me most were her eyes. They no longer had that hardness I saw in our last encounter. They looked tired, sad, but also clearer somehow. She approached my table slowly, as if she was afraid I would disappear or run away. "Hi, Mom," she said in a barely audible voice. "Hello, Claire," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. She sat across from me, her hands visibly trembling. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. We just looked at each other, two strangers who were once everything to one another. Finally, Claire broke the silence. "Thank you for agreeing to see me. I know I didn't deserve it." I didn't answer. I just waited. I had learned in my support group that sometimes silence is more powerful than words. Claire continued, her voice breaking occasionally. "I've been in intensive therapy for 4 months, not just for the gambling, but for everything. To understand how I got to that point, how I could even consider hurting my own mother." She paused, wiping away tears with a napkin. "I found out that I had been lying for years. About the money. About my marriage. About my happiness. I built a life based on appearances, and when everything started to collapse, I panicked. And in that panic, I made the worst possible decisions." I listened without interrupting, my face a mask of calm that hid the turmoil inside. "The gambling started as something social," Claire continued. "Nights with friends at the casino. It seemed harmless. But when Mark lost his business and we started having money problems, gambling became my escape. And then my obsession. I thought I could win enough to fix everything. But it only made things worse. The debts grew. The loan sharks became more threatening. And I was desperate." She covered her face with her hands. "When Mark suggested your apartment as a solution, I refused at first, but he kept pushing, saying it was the only way, that you were old anyway, that you would eventually need care, that we were just fast-forwarding the inevitable. And you believed him?" I finally said, my voice coming out harsher than I intended. Claire nodded miserably. "I believed him because I wanted to believe him, because it was easier than facing the truth of what we were really doing. Because if I convinced myself that this was for your own good, I could sleep at night." She took a sip of water, her hands still shaking. "But after you confronted us, after everything exploded, I couldn't lie to myself anymore. I saw my reflection in the mirror and didn't recognize the person looking back at me. It wasn't the daughter you raised. It was a monster who had been willing to destroy her own mother for money." The coffee shop around us continued with its normal life. People laughing, working on laptops, drinking coffee, oblivious to the devastating drama unfolding at our small table. Why should I believe you now? I asked directly. Why should I believe this isn't another manipulation? Claire looked me straight in the eye for the first time. You shouldn't. You have no reason to believe me. I've proven to be a liar, a manipulator, capable of betrayal. But I came here anyway because I needed you to hear something from me directly, not from Amelia, not from anyone else. She leaned forward. I don't expect your forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I don't expect a relationship. I destroyed that possibility. I just came to tell you that I'm sorry for every second. That if I could go back in time and make different decisions, I would. That I completely understand if you never want to see me again. I felt the tears start to roll down my cheeks. You broke my heart, Claire. You made me doubt everything. You, me, my own mind. I spent months afraid that I was really losing my mind, that maybe you were right about me. Claire sobbed openly now. I know, and I will live with that guilt for the rest of my life. I've lost everything, Mom. My marriage, my house, my dignity. But what hurts the most is having lost you, because you were the only thing that really mattered, and I was too stupid to see it until it was too late. We sat in silence for several minutes, both crying, both processing years of pain, compressed into 1 hour. Finally, I dried my tears and spoke with a firm voice. Claire, listen to me carefully because I will only say this once. What you did was unforgivable. You planned to steal my home, my freedom, my dignity. You planned to lock me up in a psychiatric hospital and medicate me until I really lost my mind. That's not something that can be erased with apologies or therapy. She nodded, accepting every word as the punishment it was. But, I continued, surprising myself, I also see that you are trying to change. And I appreciate that you had the courage to come here and face what you did. Claire looked up, a small spark of hope in her eyes. What does that mean, Mom? I took a deep breath. It means I'm not ready to forgive you. I may never be. But I'm also not going to close the door completely. If you are truly committed to your recovery, if you are really changing, maybe in the future, a very distant future, we can find some way to coexist. Not like before, that died. But maybe something new, something more honest. Claire started crying again, this time with something that seemed like relief mixed with sadness. That's more than I deserve, she whispered. Much more. I told her the conditions. I don't want regular contact. Not yet. Maybe in 6 months or a year. If you stay on your path of recovery, we can have another conversation like this. But you need to prove with actions, not with words, that you have really changed. You need to rebuild your life honestly. And you need to accept that the apartment will never be yours. That my assets are legally protected and that when I die, they will go to charity, not to you. Claire nodded vigorously. I understand. I accept it all. I don't want your apartment, Mom. I don't want your money. I just want, one day, to be able to look at you without feeling this crushing shame. I just want that maybe, before one of us dies, you can think of me without hatred. I don't hate you, I admitted, surprised to realize it was true. I'm angry. I'm hurt. I'm disappointed. But I don't hate you. You're my daughter. And no matter how much damage you've caused, that bond doesn't completely disappear. It breaks. It gets twisted. But it doesn't disappear. We stayed for another half hour, talking about superficial things. Her job at the coffee shop, my support group, the weather. We avoided deep topics, the wounds still too fresh to be touched further. When we finally said goodbye at the coffee shop door, Claire extended her hand. Not a hug, not yet. Just her hand. I took it briefly. Take care, Claire, I said. You too, Mom, she replied before walking away. Her shoulders slumped under the invisible weight of everything she had lost. June met me on the sidewalk. How do you feel? She asked as we walked to her car. I don't know, I answered honestly. Empty. Sad. Relieved. Confused. All at the same time. She hugged me. It's normal. You don't have to have all the answers today. Or tomorrow. Or ever. The following months were a process of slow healing. I continued to attend the support group. I became more active in the community. I started volunteering at a center that helped seniors understand their legal rights and protect themselves from financial abuse. My story, my pain, became something useful, something that could help others not go through what I went through. Samuel informed me that Mark had tried to continue the legal process alone, but without Claire as a co-plaintiff and with all our evidence against him, his case was dismissed. Moreover, he now faced charges for attempted fraud. The legal system, slow but eventually just, was working. Mr. Hayes lost his license to practice law permanently. Dr. Evans faced multiple lawsuits from other families whose cases were being reviewed. Judge Albright was forced into early retirement. My case had started a domino effect that was cleaning up, at least a little, a corrupt system. 6 months after our meeting at the coffee shop, I received a letter from Claire. This time, I didn't open it right away. I left it on my table for 2 days, looking at it occasionally, debating whether I wanted to know what it said. Finally, on a quiet afternoon with a cup of tea, I opened it. "Mom," it began, "it's been 6 months since we saw each other. I wanted you to know that I'm still sober. I'm still working. I'm still in therapy. I've paid off half of my debts by working 2 jobs. It's not easy, but it's honest. And for the first time in years, I can sleep at night without guilt and lies choking me." The letter continued. "I'm not writing to ask for another meeting. I know you said maybe in 6 months or a year, but I don't want to pressure you. I just wanted you to know that I'm keeping my word, that I'm changing, and that every day I think of you and what I lost. I don't expect to get it back. I just hope you know that the daughter you raised still exists somewhere inside this broken person I am now, and I'm fighting to find her again." It ended simply with, "I love you, Claire. No, I hope to hear from you, or please call me." Just a simple statement of a feeling that, despite everything, was probably still true. I put the letter in a special drawer where I had started collecting things. Claire's first letter, old photos of when she was a little girl, memories of when our relationship was pure and uncomplicated. I didn't answer the letter. I wasn't ready yet, but I kept it, and that meant something. It meant that the door I had said I wouldn't close completely was still ajar, even if only a crack. In my support group, I shared about the letter. Some people thought I should cut off contact completely. Others understood my ambivalence. "There's no manual for this," said Marlene, another member of the group whose son had scammed her out of $150,000. "We each heal at our own pace and in our own way." My life found a new rhythm. It was no longer defined by fear or betrayal. It was defined by my strength, my resilience, my community. June became more than a neighbor. She became my chosen family. The people from the support group became my friends. I had lost a daughter, at least the version of her I knew, but I had gained a network of people who understood, who supported, who didn't judge. A year after the meeting in the coffee shop, on the anniversary of that terrible day when I heard the conspiracy that almost destroyed me, I did something symbolic. I hired a painter to renovate my apartment, new colors on the walls, rearranged furniture. I wasn't erasing the memories of Arthur, but creating space for new memories. I was reclaiming my home not just legally, but emotionally. The day the painters finished, I organized a small gathering. I invited June, Samuel, some members of my support group. We celebrated not with expensive champagne, but with coffee and homemade pastries. We celebrated survival, resilience, the capacity of the human spirit to heal from even the deepest wounds. That night, standing on my balcony looking at the city light up with the night lights, I thought of Claire. I wondered where she was, what she was doing, if she was really healing, or if she would eventually fall back. I had no answers, and I was learning to be okay with that. Not all stories have perfect endings. Not all broken relationships can be repaired. But some scars could become reminders of strength instead of just pain. And maybe that was enough. 2 full years had passed since that day in the coffee shop when my world fell apart. 2 years of therapy, of healing, of rebuilding. I was a different person now, stronger in some ways, more cautious in others, but definitely more aware of my own worth and my ability to defend myself. In those 2 years, Claire had sent me letters every 3 months, never asking for anything, just updating me on her life, her progress, her struggles. I read them all, but I had only replied once. A simple message. "I'm glad you're well. Keep going. 5 words that took hours to write. Then a different letter arrived. I recognized it immediately by the envelope. It was thicker than the previous ones. When I opened it, I found a letter and something else. A check for $20,000. I stared at it as if it were a strange object from another planet. The letter explained, "Mom, this money represents 2 years of constant work. 2 jobs. No unnecessary expenses. No games. No betting. It's a tiny fraction of what I owe you, not just in terms of what I tried to steal from you, but of everything you gave me throughout my life. I know you changed your will. I know everything will go to charity when you pass. And that's okay. It's the right thing to do. But this money is mine. I earned it honestly. And I want you to use it for yourself. A trip, apartment renovations, whatever you want, or donate it too if you prefer. But please, accept it as proof that I'm trying to be better." I called Samuel to consult him. "Is it legal for me to accept this? Could it be seen as some kind of bribe or manipulation attempt?" He reviewed the letter and the check. "It's completely legal. It's a gift. You can accept it or reject it. The real question is, do you want to accept it?" I spent days thinking about that question. I finally decided to accept the check, but not for myself. I donated it entirely to the Senior Help Center where I volunteered. I used the money to establish a fund that would help elderly victims of family abuse pay for legal representation. I wrote to Claire explaining what I had done with the money. Her response was simple. "Perfect. That's exactly what was supposed to happen." That exchange opened something between us. It wasn't trust. It wasn't the unconditional love from before. It was something new. A mutual recognition. She recognized the damage she had caused. I recognized her effort to amend it. We started exchanging emails occasionally, brief, superficial at first. The weather, recipes, TV shows, safe things that didn't touch the deep wounds. Gradually, very gradually, the conversations became slightly more personal. She told me about her job at the coffee shop and how she had been promoted to manager. I told her about my volunteer work and the people I was helping. 3 years after the original incident, Claire asked me for something. "Mom, I know this is a lot to ask, but I'd like to see you again. In person. It's been a long time. I've changed a lot. And I think maybe it's time to have a real conversation about our future, if we even have one." I hesitated. The last time we had seen each other had been painful, but manageable because we both knew it was temporary. But this sounded different. This sounded like an attempt to build something more permanent. I talked to my therapist about it for several sessions. "What's the worst that could happen?" she asked me. "That she would hurt me again," I replied. "And if that happens, could you survive it?" I thought about the question. Yes, I survived it once. Could I survive it again? Then the real question is, do you want to try? I agreed to meet Claire again, this time in a public park, a neutral place full of people where we would both feel safe. I arrived early, as I now did for everything. I needed time to prepare myself mentally, to fortify my emotional defenses. Claire arrived exactly on time. 3 years had changed her appearance even more. She looked healthy. Her clothes were simple but clean and appropriate. Her hair now had some gray streaks that she didn't try to hide. But what struck me most was her expression. There was no more desperation or fear. There was calm. Not the fake calm from before, but something genuine. We sat on a bench under a large tree. "Hi, Mom," she said with a small but real smile. "Hello, Claire," I replied. This time the conversation flowed more naturally. We talked about her life. She told me how she had paid off all her debts after 3 years of constant work, how she had found a small apartment she could afford, how she had made new friends in her recovery program. She showed me pictures on her phone, her small place, her work at the coffee shop, tangible proof of a life rebuilt from scratch. "I'm proud of you," I said, surprising myself with my own words. "This must have been incredibly difficult." Claire quickly wiped away her tears. "It was. It still is some days. But every day I wake up without the weight of lies and debts. Every day I earn my money honestly. It gets a little easier." We talked for hours. For the first time in years, we really talked. Without masks, without manipulation. Just two women trying to find their way back to each other, knowing the road would be long and difficult. Before we parted, Claire asked me something I had been avoiding. "Mom, do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me?" "Completely, I mean." I took my time to answer. "I don't know, Claire. Honestly, I don't know. Some things are so big that I'm not sure complete forgiveness is possible. But what I do know is that I can accept who you are now, and I can appreciate the effort you're making." "That's enough," she said with a sad smile. "It's more than I hoped for." We established a new agreement. We would see each other once a month, coffee or lunch, an hour or two. No expectations of more. No pressure to rebuild what was. Just two people learning to know each other again as the versions of themselves they now were. The months passed, and our monthly meetings became something we both looked forward to. They weren't easy. There were awkward moments. Long silences. Conversations that touched on painful topics. But there were also moments of laughter. Shared memories of better times. Glimpses of the relationship we once had. One day, Claire told me something important. "Mom, I met someone. His name is Ethan. He's a member of my recovery group. He's also rebuilding his life after addiction. He's different. Honest. We don't have secrets because we both know the cost of lies too well." I felt strangely happy for her. "I'm glad, Claire. Everyone deserves a second chance at love." She looked at me with hope. "Do you think maybe, sometime in the future, you could meet him?" "Not now. I know we're not ready, but maybe someday." I thought about it carefully. "Maybe. Ask me again in 6 months." 6 months later, I agreed to meet Ethan. He was a quiet, thoughtful man, with his own scars and his own story of redemption. I saw how he was with Claire, gentle but honest, loving but not codependent. A relationship built on truth instead of illusions. It was the opposite of what Claire had had with Mark. After that meeting, I told Claire, "I like him. He's good for you." She smiled broadly. "He is. He keeps me honest, and I do the same for him. We're each other's accountability system." 4 years after the original incident, Claire invited me to dinner at her apartment. It was the first time I would enter her personal space since everything happened. I hesitated, but finally accepted. Her small apartment was modest, but cozy, clean, organized, with pictures on the walls of her new life. Ethan cooked for us that night. Nothing elaborate, just pasta with homemade sauce and salad, but made with care and love. As we ate dinner, I looked around the table. Claire, my daughter who had fallen so low and had fought so hard to get back up. Ethan, a man who understood redemption because he had lived it himself. And me, a woman who had survived the deepest betrayal and had found the strength to move on. We weren't a traditional family. We probably never would be. But we were something. Something new. Something built on honesty and hard work instead of assumptions and expectations. That night, before I left, Claire hugged me. It was the first real hug between us in over 4 years. It wasn't like the hugs from before, those filled with unconditional love and blind trust. This one was different. It was aware, cautious, but real. "Thank you, Mom," she whispered against my shoulder, "for not completely giving up on me, for giving me the chance to show you I could change." I hugged her back, allowing myself to feel the moment completely. "Thank you," I replied, "for doing the hard work, for really changing. Not many people manage to do it." We separated, both with tears in our eyes, but this time they were different tears. Not of pain, but of something akin to hope. The years continued to pass. Claire and Ethan got married in a small ceremony at the courthouse. I attended. It was strange to be there, celebrating her marriage after everything that had happened with her first husband. But it also felt right. It felt like closing a dark chapter and starting a new one. I didn't give a speech. I didn't toast to their future. I was just present, and sometimes presence is the greatest gift. Claire never asked me for money again. She never mentioned the apartment. She never tried to manipulate or pressure. She lived her life honestly, and I lived mine. We saw each other regularly, but we maintained healthy boundaries. She understood that certain things would never go back to the way they were, and she was okay with that. 5 years after the incident, I did something significant. I updated my will again. The apartment would still be sold after my death, and most of the money would still go to charity. But I added something new. $50,000 for Claire, with one condition. She could only receive it if she had maintained her sobriety for at least 5 years after my passing, verified by her recovery program. It wasn't about the money. It was about proving that her change wasn't temporary or dependent on winning my approval. It was permanent. It was real. When I told her about this change, Claire cried. "I don't deserve it," she said. "Maybe not," I replied honestly. "But it's not about deserving it. It's about acknowledging the effort and hoping that you continue that effort even when I'm no longer here to see it." My life had found a strange but satisfying balance. I had my apartment, my fortress, my home that I had protected with so much effort. I had June, my chosen family, my unconditional friend. I had my volunteer work, helping other seniors protect themselves from the abuse I had experienced. And I had a rebuilt relationship with Claire, different from what it was, but honest in ways the previous one had never been. It wasn't the life I had imagined when my husband Arthur was alive. It wasn't the mother-daughter relationship I had dreamed of when Claire was born. But it was my life, and I had saved it. I had protected it. I had reclaimed it from those who tried to steal it from me. One afternoon, while having coffee with Claire at our usual place, she asked me a question that took me by surprise. "Mom, do you ever think about what it would be like if I had never done what I did? If you had never overheard that conversation in the coffee shop?" I thought about her question carefully. "All the time," I admitted. "I think about the naivety I had, about how I trusted blindly without questioning, about how I would have eventually signed those papers just to make you happy." Claire flinched at my words. "And then I think about who I am now. Stronger, more aware, more protected. And I wonder if I needed to go through that hell to find this version of myself." "Do you regret finding out?" Claire asked, her voice barely a whisper. "No," I answered without hesitation, "because if I hadn't found out, today I would be in a psychiatric hospital, medicated into oblivion, while you and Mark spent the money from my apartment. Or worse, I would have really lost my mind under the weight of manipulation and drugs. Finding out saved my life, Claire. Literally." She nodded slowly. "And it ruined mine. But it also gave me the chance to build a new one, an honest one. I guess we both came out transformed in ways we never expected." She was right. The betrayal had changed us both irreversibly. Today, 7 years after that terrible day in the coffee shop, I look at my life with a mixture of pride and melancholy. I am 70 years old now. My hair is completely gray. My movements are slower. But my mind is sharp. My spirit is intact. And my apartment is still mine. Some nights, when I sit on my balcony looking at the city spread out before me, I think about the whole journey. From blind innocence to devastating betrayal. From paralyzing fear to determined action. From justified anger to cautious acceptance. I haven't completely forgiven Claire. I'm not sure I ever will. But I have learned to live with what happened. I have learned to carry the scars without letting them define me. Claire continues her life with Ethan. They work together, now owning their own small coffee shop. They send me pictures occasionally of new pastries they invented, of regular customers who became friends, of a simple but honest life. We see each other less frequently now, maybe once every 2 months, but the visits are more relaxed. The weight of the betrayal is still there. It always will be, but it no longer crushes every interaction. I have shared my story with hundreds of people through my volunteer work. Every time I see the fear in the eyes of a senior who suspects their family is betraying them, I see my own reflection from years ago. And I tell them what I needed to hear back then. You are not crazy. Your instincts are correct. And there is help available. You don't have to face this alone. I have helped dozens of people protect their homes, their savings, their dignity. I have testified in courts. I have worked with lawmakers to strengthen the laws that protect seniors from family financial abuse. My pain became my purpose. My trauma transformed into my mission. And that gives meaning to everything I suffered. Samuel is still my lawyer and my friend. Every year, on the anniversary of the day I met him, I send him a fruit basket with a simple note, "Thank you for believing me when no one else would." He always replies, "Thank you for fighting when it would have been easier to give up." June, my dear June, is now 83 years old. Her health is declining, but her spirit is still strong. She tells me that my story inspired her to be more vocal about the rights of the elderly. "If you could face your own daughter," she tells me, "I can face any incompetent building manager or condescending doctor." Sometimes, in quiet moments, I wonder what would have happened if I had never walked into that coffee shop that day, if I had never heard the conversation, if I had remained in blissful ignorance until it was too late. Maybe it would have been easier in a way, less painful, less complicated, but it also would have robbed me of my agency, my power, my ability to fight for myself. And those things, I discovered, are worth more than the comfort of ignorance. My apartment is no longer just a place where I live. It is a monument to my resistance. Every room tells a story. The living room where I confronted Claire, the kitchen where I cried for entire nights, the balcony where I gradually found peace, the newly painted walls that symbolize new beginnings without erasing the past. And as I sit here tonight, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance, I understand something profound. I understand that betrayal doesn't have to be the end of the story. It can be the beginning of a new one, a story of survival, of strength, of refusing to be a victim. I understand that family love is complicated, that it can coexist with pain and disappointment, that forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, and that healing doesn't mean everything goes back to the way it was before. I understand that getting older doesn't mean becoming vulnerable or incapable. It means accumulating wisdom, experience, and the fierce determination to protect what is yours. And as the water of the nearby lake reflects the full moon, I understand that some betrayals leave permanent marks. But those marks don't have to destroy you. They can remind you how strong you are, how much you survived, how far you've come. And finally, I understand this. The water never forgets the stones that fall into it. The ripples expand forever, but eventually the surface calms, and the moon reflects again, beautiful and intact, upon waters that have known both storm and peace.